What are some of the structural pitfalls in your mind which could unsettle the cart, in the ecosystem here?
I don't know that there's any one single event, unless there's some cataclysmic black swan that happens that will change everything in technology or in Silicon Valley. I think ultimately we are going through a phase where software is, it's an old Mark Andreessen, software is eating the world, but I really do believe in that premise that, software-based services are really reforming a lot of different aspects of business and communication and social interactions and all these other aspects of how the world works. And so I'm still quite bullish in terms of what's going to happen over the long run, or even over the next 5 years, 10 years. I do think that, like everything, there's a business cycle and there'll be ups and downs, and there'll be tougher times and easier times, but the flip of it is, until self-driving technology truly exists at scale, Uber isn't going anywhere. Facebook has great network effects. Google has great lock-in effects. These are companies that aren't going to go away. LinkedIn will continue to be used as a business social network. Like Airbnb will be used for hospitality. So I just think that there's these fundamental pieces of how people live and fulfill their lives that are going to continue. And so even if there's a dip in startups in general for a while, these fundamental technology companies will continue to grow. So I'm very bullish on sort of the next 5 to 10 years. It's kind of interesting because every decade there's a new company that everybody worries about. Yeah. And so in the 90s it was Microsoft. Yeah. In the aughts, in the 2000s it was Google. Yeah. And now I think there's a mix, right? I don't think there's one single company that everybody worries about, but I think Amazon is one that on the commerce side, people have become increasingly concerned about in terms of, will it outcompete or destroy anything that can become big. But the flip of it is, you do see specific vertical applications of commerce that do very well, like a Warby Parker or the like. So I do think that there are some of these verticals that you can carve out, but you have to be very smart about how you do it, and then you have to ask, how do you create defensibility in that business over time? So which are the white spaces you think there's still a lot a lot of opportunity that you're looking at? People in Silicon Valley are asking themselves that right now. I think we've been through a cycle right now where we had a wave of mobile and social all happening sort of concurrently. We had the introduction of new SaaS services, new types of infrastructure. And so I think now we're going through a period of time where people are sort of asking, what are the next big verticals? I think a lot of people are convinced that machine learning is really interesting. But beyond that, I think there's a lot of questioning around what's next. And I think usually that's a very dangerous time for investors, because they tend to go into a search mode where they're trying to find the next thing, and they start investing in things that may not really merit a lot of attention, but especially if they're sitting on a lot of capital, they feel like it's necessary to deploy it. And so I think typically in times like this, you see a big shift from an entrepreneur-driven set of theses that a venture capitalist will have. So often as a VC or as an investor, the entrepreneurial community will come up with much better things than you ever will, right? And they'll come to you with different ideas, and you'll suddenly start to identify that there's these themes or patterns. Like suddenly there's people really sharing durable goods with each other in some sense, like Uber with your car and Airbnb with your apartment, right? You're sharing these things that are huge aspects of where you tap capital effectively. So there's this trend of this sharing economy or on-demand economy. And then VCs will say, oh, I'm going to invest in all companies that look like this. I think when there are periods of time where nobody quite knows what's next, it goes from entrepreneurs bringing the ideas to VCs starting to make up their own ideas. And that happened in the end of the last cycle with clean tech, right? Suddenly there's a wave of investing, but it was a very venture-driven investment thesis, right? They were pulling people out of other companies and funding them and writing giant checks in to get energy-related companies going. That happened with nanotech as a short wave. And I feel like we're at risk of having another wave like that happen right now.